Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well still, and welcome to today's bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's bonus, shall we? Tonight, I have some paranormal activity in the world of the secret societies. How crazy is that? I mean, they're already creepy. But then when you add a paranormal activity into it, it's a little bit more creepy. Let's get into it. Today's first experience on the paranormal side. It's been about 4 years since I was filming a documentary about Paranormal Group. I was called last minute to gear up and join them on an investigation. It was a 4-hour drive to their client's home, and I wasn't really feeling like filming that night. The group that evening consisted of 3 investigators from the group, one of them being a medium that I trusted 100% and I've worked with for many years. The owners of the house had claims of there being loud sounds coming from empty rooms, things being moved, and an uneasy feeling at all times. The power had been disconnected from the house, so we had to use external lighting and power. The investigation started about 9 p.m. that evening, and from the time of pulling up, my camera was rolling. When I exited the vehicle and started walking into the home, my Masonic ring had turned around on my finger by itself. I didn't think much of that until later in the evening. When I entered the home filming the group, it sounded and felt like someone was underneath the house with a hammer hitting where we had just stepped in the home. The investigators heard and made note of this and caught audio on the camera as well. Let's fast forward to about 11 p.m. that evening. The medium was getting a calling to head to one of the back bedrooms. We all sat down, lining against the walls surrounding the room. She asked me to dim the lights on my camera. She started talking with the entity who was there, and that's when things became very strange. She tells me at this point that the spirit is attracted to me for a specific reason, and that he bears the same marks as I do. Let me be clear when I say this. I was only filming. I'm not part of the paranormal group. The only ties I have to the group is filming the documentary. Now I'm a very colorful human, not only with my artistic side, but also with the art that I proudly display on my body. Yeah, tattoos. The medium tells me that he's bending down, pointing at my left leg. Just so happens I have a Masonic emblem on my leg. I begin to ask her if he is a Mason, and I break down and start crying and shaking uncontrollably. The only way to describe my feeling is happiness, sadness, calmness, and energized all into one emotion. After getting my composure back 10 minutes later, she tells me, yes, he is a Mason like you. Now, if anyone knows anything about Freemasonry, you will know that there are a lot of secrets and unspoken words that only the men of the organization should know. Medium tells me the spirit's background. He was a German immigrant that moved to the United States in the 60s. His name was Aldo. He built the home with his own hands, married for 50 years, had cancer. Wife had been trying to poison/kill him for insurance money. Wow! She tells me that he feels comfortable with me and has been waiting for years for me to get there. I ask the medium what he wants with me. She explains that he wants to know that it's okay to pass on and wants to hear it from me. So I tell Aldo, if you're ready to pass on, you may. The medium says that he left something under the house while building he wants you to have. It had been raining when we got there. Mud was under the home. I just didn't want to climb under the house in the middle of the night, though I did. Within a 48-inch area, they told me to look. I started digging with a garden tool, and I pulled up a rusty, mud-covered wooden square. I pull it out and rinse it off and show the medium. She tells me that's exactly what he wanted you to find and says you will know exactly what it means. So again, I tell Aldo if he is ready to pass, he can. The medium looks directly in my eye and says he's not going anywhere but with you. He's your guide, guardian angel. Now, I'm a very skeptical person, but what happens over the course of the next few years is intriguing. Days after the investigation/filming, I'm on my way to my local tattoo parlor. When I drop my phone in between my seat and the door, I'm looking down and not paying attention to the road. With a strong force of air blowing on the side of my face, I then realize I'm drifting into the other lane. I have just enough time to react and get into my lane before a transfer truck plows into me and I almost died. On another occasion, I was going to a get-together where there were plenty of adult beverages to knock out a college fraternity. I had only been there for 15 minutes when I heard this voice as clear as day that tells me to leave now, in a stern father voice. I ignore it and resume hanging out with my friends. I had planned on riding back with a group of friends that night. Hear this voice in a much louder and stern tone. You need to leave right now. So I got into my car and drove home that evening. I got a call not an hour later telling me that all of my buddies I was supposed to ride with that evening had died in a car crash. On my move to California, I was very sleepy around Arizona and New Mexico border. I heard the same voice tell me to pull over and rest. Now, it only took me one time to hear this, and I did. I remember seeing this minivan following me with a rack on top and a surfboard attached to it. I was awoken 30 to 45 minutes later to sirens of police, fire, and ambulance. When I came to my senses, I got out of my vehicle and asked the local state patrol what had happened. He said there was a van that had wrecked and killed 3 other people in other vehicles around him. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. Now, if you ask me if I'm still skeptical, I would say that I am. The entire time I've been around paranormal investigating, and in some pretty haunted places, I just need to see proof. Is there life after death? Some may say yes. I'm really on the fence about that. I can't explain a lot of what's happened or things that have gone on around me. I'm just aware that I've been put here for a reason. If not filming and painting a picture of someone, maybe I'm here to tell my story. Today's second experience on the paranormal side. This happened to me when I was in college, probably one of the creepiest and weirdest things that's ever happened to me. I do believe in ghosts, and I've had countless experiences in my life that have made it almost impossible for me not to. This still gives me chills whenever I think about it. I was a freshman in college and was heavily involved in the arts, theater, and music specifically. The fine arts building of my college had quite a bit of history. It was built in 1916 and had previously been one of the largest Masonic temples in the city. This is fairly evident by the Masonic symbols adorning the building and covering the stained glass windows. I had heard rumors of secret passageways under the building that ran all the way into downtown, but I will say I didn't believe them. A few of my professors had told stories of seeing shadow people or feeling like they were being watched when they were alone, but I thought they were just messing with us freshmen. I spent most of my time in the costume shop. I should note the costume shop was on the sub-ground floor, technically the basement. It was down 2 flights of stairs from the main entrance that led you to a landing with the costume shop and another door that I just assumed was a utility closet because it was always locked. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was just something off about it to me. On this particular evening, I had finished rehearsal for a play around 6 p.m. and figured I'd do a bit of cleaning in the costume shop while I waited for my roommate to meet me so we could grab some dinner. I was inside the costume shop when I heard a knock at the door. I walked over and looked out of the small window to the right side of the door, expecting to see my roommate, but there was no one there. I opened the door and stepped out looking around. I looked down the hallway to the left of the door to see if my roommate was hiding, trying to freak me out. Nothing. I shrugged it off as me being tired and went back into the shop and shut the door behind me. I went about my business for a bit until I heard another knock at the door a few minutes later. I was more hesitant this time. I walked to the door again, looked out the small window. Still, there was no one outside. I tried to open the door, and while the handle turned, the door would not budge. I pulled harder, thinking maybe the door was stuck, but it didn't feel like that. It felt that someone was holding the door shut on the other side. I looked out the window again and still did not see anyone. I was now frantically pulling on the handle, feeling the fear rising in my chest. I let go of the handle, only to have it start shaking wildly. Suddenly it stopped. Everything was quiet, with the exception of my own shaking breath. Then, from outside of the door, I heard a sound. The sound of the door creaking open. I gathered my strength and tried the door. It opened, and I cautiously walked out onto the landing. The always locked door was ajar. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" I tried not to sound freaked out, but I was absolutely terrified. I pulled open the door and was greeted by a pitch-black staircase leading down. It smelled like a tomb that had just been unsealed for 100 years, musty and ancient. I felt the wall for a light switch, but could not find one. I reached into my pocket for my cell phone and turned the screen on. It was bright enough that I could sort of see as I made my way down the stairs. The walls were brick and the stairs were made of stone. The closer I got to the bottom, the colder it had become. I was on the second to last step, straining to see what was in front of me. It was a door, a large stone door. I was about to move to the last step when I heard it, a voice. It was deep and sounded like it was right in front of me. It said only one word: "Welcome." I couldn't even scream. Instead, I ran up the stairs, tripping at one point, skinning my knee and my shin. Once I reached the top, I slammed the door shut and ran out of the building. My roommate showed up 5 minutes later to find me standing on the sidewalk shaking. I had told her what had happened. She went inside to get my things and locked the costume shop's door. When she came out, she looked at me with a worried expression. "That door was wide open when I went to get your stuff. Are you sure you closed it?" I just nodded my head. We walked home and didn't really talk about it anymore. I didn't go back into the building until the end of the next week. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. When I finally did, I descended the stairs and felt a chill shoot through my body. I looked at the wall where the door had been, and there was nothing there. It was just a wall. I thought I was losing my mind. I walked to the wall and studied it. My drama teacher happened to walk by, and I stopped him. "Wasn't there a door here?" He chuckled. "Yeah, they walled it up last week. They did it in a hurry as well. Not entirely sure why, though. I always thought it was a closet or something." I can't say what I encountered that night. Was it the spirit of a Freemason who never left their temple? Was it something more sinister? I honestly don't know. I spent a lot of time in that building over the course of my 2 years at that college, and while I had other odd experiences, they were nothing compared to what I experienced that one awful night. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. I was a maintenance worker at the campground resort in the Appalachian Mountains for several years. It was more like a rich glamping resort with luxury cabins that had been renovated, but the place still had an old and rustic feel to it. It was miles from civilization and super peaceful, especially during the down season. The resort was originally built during the Roaring Twenties at the height of Prohibition. The Appalachian Mountains were infamous for moonshining operations, and I'm pretty sure that the resort was the center of it all back in the day. There was a locked safe room hidden underground where they used to store the shine, as well as secret passages underneath some of the oldest cabins that were also used to store the illegal liquor. In its heyday, the resort was visited by numerous members of high society that came to party with the forbidden spirits hidden underneath the resort. One night towards the end of spring, before our busy season began, I was starting to become close with the new tourist manager of the resort. Her name was Kate, and on that night she wanted to sleep outside under the stars, but it had started raining. I suggested we go and sleep on a screened-in porch on one of the old cabins that had not been renovated yet. I thought it'd be a pretty good compromise, and we could fall asleep to the sound of the rain falling. Hey, who says romance is dead? After we got everything set up and did the old in and out, it was sometime past 2 a.m. She had fallen asleep in my arms instantly, and I lied there unable to fall asleep. I was worried that I was going to disturb her because I usually toss and turn when I have a hard time going to sleep. I figured we had been lying there for over an hour when I heard what sounded like a door inside the empty cabin open and close. It was either the bedroom or bathroom. Both had very old doors that squeaked really loud and struggled to open and shut. I knew they had to be oiled or replaced when we renovated that cabin. My first thought was that it was our boss, the resort's owner's son. He is super nosy and has been trying to get in the new girl's pants ever since he hired her. He is also very demanding and entitled. I wouldn't put it past him to fire me if he knew the two of us were seeing each other. Yet, I didn't know why he would be sneaking around the resort at night or how he would have known we were there. It was a good-sized resort. I proceed to hear footsteps coming from inside the cabin towards the door to the screened porch. I lie there as still as I could, waiting for the door to open and have my boss lose his short temper when he discovered us. I prayed that he would walk away and not find us, but nothing happened. There were no receding footsteps and no more door noise. I stayed up the whole night and didn't hear another noise come from the cabin. There was nothing there except for me and Kate and the empty cabin. The next morning, Kate rolled over and immediately asked me about the footsteps she had heard the night before. Apparently, they had woken her up, and she also stayed up all night trying to figure out where they were coming from and who they belonged to. She was terrified and would never go near the cabin again. Unfortunately, I had to go back to the cabin at night. Part of my job was making sure all of the lights were off and everything was shut down in the empty cabins at night. My boss liked to turn the lights on the empty cabins to give the appearance like the resort had more guests than we really did. Every night I had to go there. After that, I always felt a sense of dread as I walked towards the cabin. I think it's because I never figured out what was inside of there that night. That cabin had never been renovated during the 4 years that I worked at the resort. There was always some excuse that the project manager had for delaying the renovations. I didn't mind, but I hated to go inside the cabin at night. Inside the living room of the cabin, there was a huge 175-pound swinging bed on chains that could be lifted up or down to make space for the guests staying in the cabin back in the day. Every night, I went to the cabin after we heard the footsteps. I would open the front door of the cabin and find that bed swinging on its own like someone or something had just got out of the bed before I got there. Today's fourth experience on the paranormal side. I want to preface by saying that I do not fully believe in ghosts. In fact, I have been trying to avoid any conversation about ghosts or anything supernatural simply because there is no solid evidence to support them. I personally have had such experiences with the unknown as a kid, but I don't think they are relevant to what I am going through now. But anyway, here's what I'm going through. Up until the COVID pandemic started in February of 2020, I was studying in a high school and lived in its dormitory. The dormitory itself was quite old. It was built before World War I, so at least it's 100 years plus. But the problem I had with the dorm was not the fact that it was old and dusty. It's the atmosphere of the whole building and the people living in it. I do not like to use this word, but there is definitely negative energies coming from there. One student even committed suicide in the bathroom, but no one cared. There was a kind of environment I was exposed to for way too long. I lived there for nearly 4 years and never felt comfortable. I always longed for summer and winter vacation so that I could go back home. On January 16th, 2020, I had a so-called panic attack for the first time. Not sure what triggered it, but I suspect it's the stress I'd been going through just living there. I was in my room at the dorm and immediately rushed to the nursing center at the school. They just told me to just drink some water and lie down. They thought it'd go away, but it did not. The next day, they took me to the ER and took a urine and blood test to make sure that I was not on drugs, but nothing abnormal was detected. They just told me that I'm stressed and that I should take care of my health. Also around this time, I started to have intense, heavy headaches and tinnitus 24/7. I completely lost my appetite, sex desire as well. I became an insomniac. Moreover, my hands get extremely cold all of the time. I thought I was going crazy. I could see things through my eyes, but everything seemed so distant. Those symptoms especially got worse at night. I actually became afraid of the night because of it. I also started to have nightmares where I was dragged from my legs by a woman with so many bruises and cuts. I am trying to describe what I've been going through, but when I put them into words, they really don't cover it. It's not like normal pain when you get the flu or the cold. There's no word to describe them. As soon as the winter vacation began, my parents took me to some good new neurologist because I thought I may have brain injury or something. They took blood tests, MRIs, x-rays. But once again, the results came back normal. I've been prescribed so many kinds of painkillers, but none of them have worked. I was so devastated that I became depressed from the pain that I had been constantly going through. But from the Western medical point of view, I'm healthy, at least on paper. I'm still seeing doctors regularly, but they just gave up on me. It's honestly sad. Fast forward, it's been 2 years since I had my first sign of symptoms, and pretty much everything remained the same. Not even a single improvement whatsoever. My parents are super worried about me, and they have pretty much done everything they can do to help me. But all the doctors I have seen just told me that I'm stressed. I've even tried TMS and Emgatli, but they did not work. I was just so disappointed. I'd rather die than live with this much pain. About a week ago, my mom made a confession that she had a similar experience when she was exactly my age. My mom is Japanese and grew up in Iwate, Japan. She lost her mom when she was 17 years old, and she started to show symptoms that I have been having for the past 2 years. Her family thought she went insane from the death of her mom, but when her uncle saw her at my grandma's funeral, he was shocked by how my mom was being possessed by demonic spirits. She said that her uncle was the only one that could understand what she was going through at the time. He took my mom and my granddad to the Shingon Buddhist temple a few days after the funeral. There were different sects of the Buddhists in Japan, and only some perform exorcisms, and they could only be performed by a few trained monks. There, the monk immediately recognized what was wrong with her, and he performed an exorcism ritual. She told me she doesn't remember much of what he did, as she could not comprehend what was going on. But the monk tapped the back of her neck or something. She immediately got better after that. The monk told her that she is sensitive to those entities of nature. He even told her to practice and study exorcism at the temple after finishing high school because she is closer to these entities than many people. But my mom was so afraid of those things that can't be explained that she refused the offer. She told him that she wanted to go to college and have a normal life. I asked her why she didn't tell me about her experience much earlier. She told me that she was hesitant because she knew that I did not like talking about those things and that I only want to rely on Western medicine. Anyway, I bought her experience despite the fact that I did not want to believe it. Thankfully, my great uncle was still alive at the age of 80. We contacted him a few days ago and he said I should get a ritual done as soon as I could. He also told me that sensitivity to ghosts and spirits is hereditary, and that people like me and my mom are more prone to directly get affected by them. She told him what I was going through, and he is convinced that I have caught some kind of demonic spirit inside of me. I'm going to meet up with him later this month. Long story short, I'm going to the temple in northern Japan to get an exorcism ritual later this month. Today's final experience on the paranormal side. I really don't believe in the paranormal, but lately I've been thinking about experiences I just cannot explain. Some preface, I'm Native American, but it's only been this year my mom got in contact with the family on the res. She went up to the res for a week to talk to them and came back with a lot of interesting stories and some parallels to my life. The shades and gray man, if I'm remembering correctly, are what they called the hallucinations we have. I've had stress-induced hallucinations my entire life, and so had this side of my family. But we all see the same things. A shade is like a tall, spindly, faceless creature with no hands or feet, just points. At least generally that description. And the gray man are these small, gray faces of men that we see in the dark. Probably self-explanatory, I know. My great-something grandmother was psychic. If anyone actually ends up being interested in seeing this, I'll try to find some more info. But she apparently located the head of a missing person. Not much to say about her right now. My family drains batteries. I can't find any explanation for this. Honestly, I don't have to believe it. I've always broken electronics really fast. But I am unobservant and clumsy. My mom's stuff breaks too, but I guess she can be clumsy as well. But when my mom visited the family, she brought a camera. Apparently, the battery died faster than it should have. She hadn't even really used it at all. I'm sure there's a rational explanation, so when I visit in June, I'm going to try some experiments. I always had a thing that followed me up until I was 9, and I called him the Pit Man. And when my mom told them about it in my room got saged, that's fun. Honestly, just curious what you guys think about this. And there you have it, folks. Today's bonus, which I do hope you all enjoyed as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd also like to thank you for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Just everyone treated with the respect that we all deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.